All right, so hello everyone. We're going to go ahead and officially start. I am recording this just so you are aware, and we will give you the recording and the materials afterwards through email. So if you missed something, you can go back and watch it again or look at the materials afterwards. We're going to go through a lot of information that'll hopefully be helpful. Today we're mostly focusing on pronunciation for ITAs. And so please share your experiences, maybe what you're still having trouble with. Although we may not get to that specific thing today, we can certainly create more workshops in the future. So I'm joined by my colleague, Teresa Cusimano. My name's Kayla Landers, if I haven't interacted with you before. And we're from the International Center for Academic and Professional English, ICAPE. So many of you have dealt with us, especially if you had to take the TOPS exam or an OPI. But what we also want to encourage is that we are here for additional support for ITAs. So, a lot of times students test, we certify, and then it's just you go out and you're a TA and that's it. But we want to really say that we're also here for support. So things that you're having issues with, like pronunciation, maybe that you've come across, or any other issues that you want to address, please send us an email. The InTops email would be a great place, or the survey at the end of this workshop, to give us suggestions of things that you could use help with as far as being a TA. And so with that, we'll go ahead and start with our objectives and what we're going to cover today. Teresa, did you want to add anything else?
No, I'm glad to see so many people here today, though. Yeah, I think it'll be a really helpful workshop for those of you that are currently preparing for the TOPS exam, and for those of you that are teaching. So if you have any questions, please, it's hard to see everybody when we're sharing our screen. So please either put a note into the chat and I will monitor the chat, or I'm comfortable if you just have something and you want to call it out. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we do want this to be interactive, so please feel free to unmute yourself. It's great if you can have your camera on so we can see you and interact. As Teresa mentioned, use the chat. And I apologize if sometimes it looks like I'm not looking at you, but I'm managing two screens and sharing my screen. So just trying to pay attention to everything that's going on. So I like to just make that announcement. And it's a good idea if you are also in a TA role and doing an online component to also mention that, because that eye contact and things is such an important aspect of communication, but it's much more challenging when we are on Zoom to figure out, do I look at the camera? Do I try and look at facial expressions of the students, which means I'm not then looking at the camera, and where exactly to look? And I still don't have an answer for that. So I will try to balance some of the camera, some at your facial expressions. And that means I'm looking away because you are on my second screen. So just giving you a heads up there. So the first thing we'll talk about are the objectives. So hopefully by the end, you will be able to identify your own personal pronunciation challenges as ITAs. What specifically have you encountered as troublesome? Discuss the difference between segmental and suprasegmental pronunciation. Focus on the suprasegmental problem. So we're not going to focus a lot on the segmentals, more on suprasegmental stress and intonation that are common for ITAs. Review some typical challenges with thought groups and practice using them in classroom speech. And continue practicing pronunciation using the materials provided through the workshop. So again, our idea is kind of to introduce you to some of these things, some resources, and then you can continue practice after today's workshop.
Okay, so this nice little graphic that Kayla and I have here kind of lays out for you what the different elements of pronunciation are, right? So you've got on this outside segmentals, which are the vowel sounds and the consonant sounds and those individual sound pronunciations. And then we get to the inner layer, which I think is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. And this is what we're going to be working on primarily today on the suprasegmentals, right? The intonation, the linking, the stress, those things that they can really affect the meaning of a sentence very easily, right? And they're the difficult things to master. So we will be giving you materials that you can continue to practice. I don't think Kayla or I or anyone would expect that you would walk away from a 90-minute workshop and have this down pat. But we will try and give you some things that you can keep working on this. And again, feel free to ask questions. So if there's anything that you're not sure of, just let us know, okay?
Okay, so on this slide, just a reiteration that English language is difficult for pronunciation because there are multiple different aspects to it. And so we want to focus on listening how the word is pronounced, not necessarily the spelling. So we have the same letter A in all of the examples on this slide, but they each have a different pronunciation. So the challenging thing with English, of course, there are 5 vowels, the actual vowels themselves. However, each vowel letter can represent many different sounds. And then when you put them in combination with other vowels, then you also have more vowel sounds. So, if we talk about the letter A, it can represent like a sound in hat, or can get long with the word hate, car, or care. And again, that same sound, though, can be represented by different letters. So it could be different vowel letters, but have the same sound as another. So in this, do I have any brave volunteers to read the sentence using all of these words that have the letter A?
Anybody want to try all the different pronunciations of the letter A?
I can go.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So, but I don't know how to pronounce this word, the YACHT. Could you first teach me how to pronounce it?
Sure, that's a yacht.
Yacht. Okay, so Jack was about to share his private yacht with his football coach when he received a cable informing him that the engine needed repair.
Excellent. Nice job, and thanks for volunteering for that. Again,
Yep.
just a reiteration here that all of those had that vowel A, but had very different pronunciations throughout. So just reiterating that. But we're not going to focus today on the exact vowel sounds. We want to get more into the details. In the following slide, you'll see breaking it down between segmentals and suprasegmentals. So in this case, segmentals are, or we call phonemes, are those units of sound that can be analyzed when we're looking at just consonant sounds or just the vowel sounds. Those are the segmentals. They definitely have importance and could be a workshop all themselves. So today, instead, we're going to focus on the suprasegmentals, which are speech features such as stress, tone, word juncture, and it's not limited to just single sounds, but often over syllables, words, or phrases all together. So this is going to be our focuses on the suprasegmentals, but we do have a handout about consonants, just again for some more review. Teresa, are you able to add that in the chat, or do you want me to do that?
I thought we had that on the last slide as part of, but I can find it and put it in the chat if you like.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I will also email all of the resources for you. So although we're not diving into segmentals, we just wanted to give you another handout, another resource for you if you want to practice those on your own. And if that is a concern of yours, these smaller chunks, again, in the survey at the end, also comment that you would like a workshop to focus just on those.
Okay. So yeah, and that handout, if anyone would like some instruction on how to use it, I'd be more than happy to sit with you for a few minutes and show you how to use the segmental pronunciation handout. So the super segmental features, this chart kind of breaks all of that down, right? Showing you in the flow chart, the tone, right? Kind of goes into the rhythm and pitch, the way that we speak, and the length of a sound, right? Or the stress, where you could see is very complicated, right? Word stress can change a word meaning, right? It can talk about different, the different syllables we move into. Now, how do we know which syllable is stressed in a word and which one is not? And then you can see the last thing too that is part of those super segmentals is intonation. And we will actually practice like moving those stress and the intonation in the same sentence to see how those sounds can actually change the meaning of what the speaker is saying and what the listener is. It can be very confusing, right? Trying to figure out what the meaning is. So this is what we'll focus on today, like I said. And yeah, and like Kayla said, if at the end in the survey, if you want to work on the individual sounds, I definitely think we could do that. So now, Kayla, I have the pronunciation diagnostic link I can put in the chat if you want for this one. Did you want me to put that into the chat?
Yes, and then you could just explain to them what they're going to do for that. Yes.
Okay, so this is a quick diagnostic. Actually, there's, I like this link. It's free, which is nice, right? For speech pronunciation. If you can open up that link and I'll explain to you what the website is. And we're going to give them a few minutes to do their own diagnostic, right, Kayla?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so everybody good? You have the website opened up? So this website, you can see there's a lot of different little bubbles on the screen that you can test different parts of speech. And Kayla and I were going to give you just a few moments today, just to, you can shut your camera off for a few minutes, turn your volume off, and test yourself. So if you scroll down to simple sentences 1 through 4, it has there on the left-hand side underneath vowels number 2, and you open that up. Try taking lesson number 1. So you can, you'll see there's a recording feature. So you need to have your microphone on and it gives you like short sentences and you'll move through. So I ate a snack, right? Record yourself. And at the end, it will give you a diagnostic. So if any of you have worked with Pronunciation Power before, it's very similar. Anybody have any questions looking at the website? No? All right. So I think what Kayla, we said like 5 minutes, give them to take the diagnostic.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. And like I said, if you want to shut your camera off for a minute to do it, that's fine. And when you're done, just come back and we'll talk about your results. Done well with that one. Give them a few more minutes, Kayla.
I think just about 1 more minute. All right, so I think mostly everybody has added in their score. So it looks like a lot are complete. So we'll go ahead and continue on. And so again, this is just a resource you can continue to use after the workshop today. Go in, pick a different category, see how you do. Maybe you have more trouble with the vowel sounds. Go in and practice those, or consonant sounds. And there's a lot of different activities for those. So again, this is just a good opportunity to continue to practice. So we wanted to allow you time to, 1, try it out, and then 2, again, it'll be a continued resource for you that we will email you the link for again in the email in case you lose it right during the workshop.
And I'm sorry, I put the link to the second pronunciation resource that we had there too is in the chat.
Okay, so let me, is everybody seeing my slides again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so next we want to talk, so again, a lot of that pronunciation activity that we just did focuses on those segmentals, those smaller groups, thinking about vowel sounds, consonant sounds. But we're going to think bigger and go to the super segmentals, which first going to start talking about thought groups. And so this is how you kind of divide up what you're talking about. And this is really important for ITAs because how you group your words and how you pause may affect the meaning that you give or the overall comprehension that your listeners have. And of course, as ITAs, we want to make sure that whoever's listening has the most comprehension that they can so that they understand the content you are reviewing. So in English, when we talk about just speaking in general, English is not a stream of endless, continuous sound. Okay, there are pauses between certain groups of words, phrases, clauses, between sentences, between questions. One of the key things that can help you, of course, is punctuation. So if you are reading something, sometimes it's easier to figure out those thought groups because anywhere there's a comma, we know, okay, pause. Anywhere there's an end punctuation, we know we can pause. The difference comes whenever you're not reading written text and you're figuring out what you're going to say, figuring out where you should break those chunks up. So again, the thought groups are just typically 2 or 5 words that form a unit of meaning, also called a phrase. And within that, each thought group usually has one word that gets more focus, more importance. And every focus word then it has a stressed syllable. So we kind of keep breaking it down, right? We have a larger group that we break into smaller phrases or thought groups. Within that, we have one word that gets more focus. Within that, one syllable gets more stress. And that peak of meaning in the vowel is the stress syllable. And we always stress that. So we kind of are working backwards with thinking about thought groups and ideas. So here is an example. And so we break this up. Can I ask a question? This is something a student might ask you. For the lab report, do I use the equation for each piece of data I observe? Or do I just solve the equation once to show I know it? Okay, so they kind of broke up these chunks, pause, allow you to process it, and have different words that have more importance, right? So we might put a different stress. Can I ask a question for the lab report? So I might put the emphasis on the lab report. Which report are we talking about? So how about in your response? So this is maybe a common TA response. So this was what the student asked you. Where would you put some pausing for thought groups? Where would you divide this up for the response? So take a look at it for a minute and then let me know what you think where you would put some pausing. Do I have any volunteers to think about where to break this up?
Even if you're not sure about the whole sentence, if you can get the first couple of thought groups.
I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, first stop will be after I think, and then it's based in your lab report. After report, then to solve for each observation of data. After data, you will better understand the concept. After concept, and then if you work through all the data after data, then that way. I don't know after at the end there is a period after way.
Excellent. So you got all of the correct spots there. You don't necessarily have to have one after I think, but sometimes people put a pause there just kind of to emphasize you're thinking through the process. So great job on figuring that out. And it can vary depending, again, where you want to put the focus, but we want to make sure that it's clear, and we'll look at some examples where maybe it's divided unequally, and so that then the comprehension is lost, because if we break it up into other chunks that don't have the same focus, then it's harder to understand. So let me make sure I clear those off, because otherwise those lines will continue on our next slide, but great job.
There's a question in the chat, Kayla. So just curious, Chingu asked, do native speakers process the sentence, chunking it while speaking? Do you get some training on this at school?
So in my opinion, there's no training on it. It's just a natural English is designed in this way where it's not this continuous stream of thought. So we don't necessarily have the training, but I would say as far as if you're not familiar with it, again, focusing on major content words, what are the most important, and we'll continue to build on this as we go through. And we have a practice exercise where you're going to listen for the thought groups, but really saying, okay, what is my verb, or what is my focus within that? Are there major words, or is it just a lot of prepositions and other smaller non-content words? And that will help you kind of break that up.
I also think that depending on what you study too, so I can say that I have had some training in thought groups and word stress and sentence stress. If you like poetry, right? So anyone that has studied poetry, it's a really good way to practice thought groups and stress, because you listen. So even if you go online and you listen, Poetry Out Loud is a really good website. And you can just hear how they place their stress in the poems when they're reading them. If any of you have gone to a poetry reading, you'll hear how the stress is really significant. So I think that's one good way to practice that a little bit more, or at least start hearing it, right? So one of my favorites, a really good example, I'll put it in the chat for you. It's called, what is it? Oh, Those Winter Sundays. Yeah, so if you Google this, you can hear the thought groups in the poem. It's a really good example of it. Okay, and the website again is called Poetry Out Loud.
Great question. And again, we'll continue looking at it here, actually in the next slide, that we're going to hear these thought groups. And again, I think the more just exposure you have of listening how speakers are dividing their thoughts will also help you with your own division of these thought groups. And really, again, my suggestion is looking at written work that does have punctuation. That's kind of the thought process behind where to put those pauses. So maybe we aren't necessarily trained in speaking, but as we read something that's written, again, I have to work on this with my daughter a lot. She's in 3rd grade and working on her literacy skills and reading, and she just kind of reads everything like it's all one sentence. And I say, no, there was a period, stop, pause, or change your intonation there so I know what's going on. She puts no difference between a question or a sentence. And so, yeah, I guess some training in that sense of working through it, just more so from reading out loud and then developing that into our own speech.
So in the chat, I put a Google Doc of the transcript that's on the screen. So if you want to open up that Google Doc and look at it without the thought groups in it, right? If you want to try and listen to the video and try and put in the thought groups, note the thought groups as you're listening, and then you can look at the screen and see if you were able to get most of them, right? I don't think you have to get all of them, but if you just want to give it a shot instead of looking at the PowerPoint, there is a document without any of the thought groups noted. So you can try and do it on your own if you like.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is play this short clip. It's from a TED Talk. And so as she said, you have the transcript. You can choose to try it with just watching it where we have already divided those, or you can try it on your own. Maybe this time around you just watch what's on my screen and follow it, and then maybe after the workshop go back and watch it again and try it on your own, because you'll get then our slides that then you can compare and check yourself later without having seen it. So I'm going to play. Hopefully my sound is good to go.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria. I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes. And we never talked about the weather because there was no need to.
Okay. So again, what we suggest here is just good practice. And you can really do this with any TED Talk out there, any speech that you can find online. TED Talks are particularly nice because they do have the transcript, and you can just try and see where you think those pauses are, what effect do those have by having even a slight pause. So some of these maybe are a little shorter in thought group than what we talked about in the last slide. You know, we might look at this at about the age of 7, but these are just kind of, again, where you want to place some emphasis and where you want them to redirect their thinking, or just make sure audience is following along could be reasons for some of these pauses within your speech. Anything you want to add to that, Teresa?
I was just thinking as I was listening to her speaking, in my classes a lot this semester, I'm talking to students about their pace, right? How fast they're talking. And sometimes I always tell them, I said, coming from New York, I know that I come from an area of the country where people speak very quickly. So this is a great practice. If you're working on thought groups, it's a great way to start slowing yourself down a little bit. And we've talked a lot in ESLP 12 on about pace, and that just slowing down can often really improve your pronunciation. So practicing your thought groups is one way to practice and try and moderate how quickly and how fast you're speaking.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just some more practice with thought groups. So an example, again, this is a badly formed thought group idea. So maybe as a TA, they say, we don't have time to finish this problem today. Very confusing for the student because they don't know where the focus is and what's going on because it was incorrectly formed. So if this were what you heard, how do you think it should be better phrased or thought groups put to make this make more sense?
And the first pause would be after time, and the second pause would be after problem.
Yeah, great. So if I rephrase that, we don't have time to finish this problem today. And then we know, okay, we mean we can do it another time. So again, the student didn't understand. This is another badly formed. The students who passed the last exam are exempt from the final. Where should we fix those thought groups?
students would be the first, then who passed the last exam after exam uh, are exempt after exempt from the final is the last.
Excellent, exactly. And so again, when we think about some of that, we say, okay, the students, and then who passed who passed the last exam. These are further modifying who those students are, giving extra information. And so when we give those pauses, we have a deeper understanding of what's going on. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put you into 2 different breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, there's going to be I'm going to give you a Google Doc before you head there. And that Google Doc has a longer transcript of a possible situation from that's going on in a classroom that a TA might be giving information. And so in your group, what I want you to do is talk about where you think those pauses would go, where those thought groups would go. You can use the backslash to divide that out. And so you can talk it through with your group where you think it should go. The Google Doc is just broken into group 1 and group 2. So group 1, just make sure you do at the top, use the transcript from the top. If you're in group 2, you will work on the one that's in the bottom. It's the same transcript, but that way you each have one to look at, so you're not talking at different times and trying to add things in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into the chat box for you guys, the Google Doc to work on, as soon as I find my chat box. Oh, there it is. Okay. And then once you get into your breakout room, if you're in group 1, just make breakout room 1, you'll use group 1. And if you are in breakout room 2, use for group 2. We'll just give you a couple minutes. You don't necessarily have to get through the whole transcript, but just talk about where you would put those thought groups. Everybody understand what you'll be doing in your breakout room?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
One other little hint too is that as you're figuring them out, within those thought groups, there's usually one focus word, right? So in each group, there's usually one word that's going to be stressed.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and assign the breakout rooms, and you have the Google Doc in the chat, so just make sure you open that first, and we'll just give you a couple minutes to work that through with your group. And if you need anything, just call us in, okay? All right, so how was that activity? Any challenges, trouble?
I don't think they're back,
They're back.
are they? I only see 2 participants.
Yeah, I'm back.
I see them.
Yeah, okay.
And we had fun.
You had fun?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, and again, I will send out, whenever I send this out, the Google Doc again and kind of point out if there are anything that you missed or points where you missed, but there's no one absolute right or wrong answer. Again, it depends on the context where you're talking and what information you're trying to provide, what information you're trying to stress. That sometimes can vary how we put our thought groups. So it looked like, especially the group 2 I was looking at, you're on the right track of those divisions. What you notice in that transcript were a lot of filler words, and you saw like and so, and they can read these fillers that help just kind of give overall context. Those are where we have those pauses around those particular things. So let's go ahead. Oh, I was going to say we lost Teresa, but she came back. Okay. So some of the challenges we see with thought groups are that the false starts, where you aren't sure what you want to say, so you kind of keep repeating the same thing. That throws off these ideas of thought groups. Endless sentences, so not giving any pausing, or split thought groups where they shouldn't be divided. So we saw that in the last slide where they were incorrectly divided. Those ones also cause challenges for the listener. So in this case, I'm going to play a short clip. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a TV show called King of Queens. I haven't actually ever watched the TV show, but this one comes across as a good example where he's stressing the wrong things, putting the thought groups in the wrong spots. And so they're native speakers, but they're having trouble understanding what each other's trying to say because of these challenges with thought groups.
Okay, hon. All right, then I'll see you around 10. All right, bye-bye. Listen, Carrie's not gonna make it home for dinner, so I'm gonna order her some pizza. From where? From Sal's. Sal's? Have you lost your mind? Okay, not Sal's. Then from where? A little neighborhood joint called Domino's. Domino's? Yeah, that's it. All right, what's the number? It's 1718-1168-011. Look, I have way too many numbers, okay? I gave you the area code. We're in the area code. I don't need to dial it. Okay, ready? I'm ready. 1168. Okay, you know what? How about a little phone number rhythm, huh? You know, a little bum bum ba, bum ba, bum ba. Got it? I got it. Okay. 1. Yeah. 6. Yep. Teamed. I already dialed the 6. I can't go back in time and slip a 1 in. Well, whose fault is that? I'm making a sandwich. What did you order from McDonald's?
Okay, so in this example, kind of a humorous way of looking at the failure to divide thought groups. Simple as a phone number, we have a certain pattern where we typically do a grouping of numbers, pause, numbers, pause, and he wasn't doing that. We also saw some syllable stress. He was saying Domino's, and the real stress was dominoes. And so we see some of just common errors that might happen and how then comprehension or just being able to actually complete a task fails. So he wasn't even able to dial the phone number because we didn't see those particular pauses where he expected them and he couldn't comprehend them. So we see this happen across multiple disciplines and different different types of interactions. And so keep that in mind. Again, we just wanted to kind of point that out in this slide. So I guess we'll move on to talking about, oh, sorry, not that one. Talking about stress.
Okay, so we're going to transition to the next part, individual stress downs, right? So where you place the stress in your sentence is going to have a huge impact on the meaning and what the other person is going to is trying to say. So if you look at my little cartoon here that I enjoy, right? Wait, you're breaking up means a very different thing than wait, you're breaking up, right? So there's two total different meanings in those sentences based upon where you put the stress. And I think this is where a lot of communication breakdowns can happen. Right? Go ahead, Kayla.
Okay, so here is where we are going to focus on within those thought groups, right? You're going to stress or highlight one or two of the syllables or words from each thought group. So there's a word that's going to get more stress, and within that word, a syllable will get more stress as well. And when you do that, the syllables or the word is pronounced longer and louder. And so that way we understand what you put that focus on. So a lot of times where you figure out what needs to be stressed. So a couple rules, 4 of them here. If in a new topic, the last meaningful word, again, in your thought group. So typically a noun, a verb, a really important adjective, or a question word will get that stress. After that, new information or contrasting information. So if you're kind of flipping gears and changing it, you want to emphasize where that change is, or on transition words. And these are really important and key in teaching. Whenever you're moving on to something else, these transition words indicate to your students, oh, okay, we're moving on to something different, oh, and I need to pay attention because this is going to be something new, something different. So these are where you're going to put that extra stress, a little bit longer, a little bit louder. Okay, so in this example here, you see still those same thought groups divided by those backslashes, but you also see where that syllable stress would happen. Okay, so today we'll talk about reactions. Okay, so that actions part gets that longer, louder, because the word reactions is that content word, the last word within that thought group. So it's going to get that longer, louder, and within it, the syllable is reactions. To determine what type of reaction we have. Because reaction isn't new, right? We already talked about reaction in the first thought group. The new information is we're going to focus on the type. So we're going to go ahead and stress that one. And type is just one syllable, so the whole word gets that focus. We look at the change in temperature and the surroundings. So we're focusing a couple of different things there. If heat is absorbed, that's the verb in the end of the thought group, then it's an endothermic reaction. For example, the melting of ice. So this is where you're putting those stress. And notice again how they get a little bit longer, a little bit louder to make sure that that's where the focus goes. Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah.
I think, Kayla, it's also important to point out that this can sound very unnatural if you come from a language that does not use word stress this way. So when you're practicing and you're doing it, it just may not feel natural to you. But to a native speaker, it will sound normal, like the natural sounds for us. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, great point. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. Again, some challenges with this that might happen is giving prominence to too many words, right? If you're stressing and giving equal stress to all the words in the thought group, then we're lost with what am I supposed to focus on? As a listener, it's a lot to absorb, and you probably listened to speakers where everything sounded the same and you didn't know what was the important things to walk away with. And so really this key, what do you want them to focus on? Or not using prominence to highlight either the new information, the contrastive, the transitions. And so these are things where, again, the students, your audience gets lost because they're not sure what is the important words or what important information do they need to focus on. Out of these challenges, or just in general with talking about word stress or syllable stress within a thought group, what do you find most challenging?
I guess the use of intonations.
I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't hear what you said.
I guess the use of intonations.
Intonation? Okay.
Seems challenging.
Is it difficult for you as a listener, or do you mean when you for yourself when you're speaking?
No, for myself when I'm speaking.
Okay, knowing where to
While
place that
listening,
stress.
it seemed easy. For actually British English, for Amish it seemed a bit difficult for me.
I think that's one of the challenges too for a lot of students when you learned that British English and then you come to the United States and the words are the same, but the stress is different.
Yeah, that's confusing.
Yeah, great point. And again, what I encourage you to do, if you say you're not really familiar of where to put this stress, watch different TED Talks, find different speeches, and really kind of listen, okay, one, how are they dividing it in thought groups? And within that thought group, where are they putting that emphasis? And can you clearly hear it? And then looking at that, why do you think that they put the emphasis on that particular word? But we're going to continue looking at some of these content and function words in the next slide. But first, again, practice here. So in these sentences, which word or syllable do you think you would put that stress on, or the prominence? So if your phrase was, remember my office hours have changed, what would you stress?
I think remember, the first of all, remember, and then changed.
Yeah, exactly. Remember, my office hours have changed. So yes, on both ends of that, that's where the stress would be. Great. How about sentence number 2?
I think for this lab and 3.
Okay, yeah, so you could do it that way. And again, it depends on the context. I would think of it as we're maybe already in the lab, and so I might say for this lab, maybe it's different than normal. There are 3 in a group, so definitely 3 to emphasize that number. Numbers often get that stress. So I might say for this lab, meaning different than our other labs, but it would depend on the context. Are they familiar in doing labs often, or is lab the different thing than normal? So I think either way could work. It just depends on what you're trying to get across. Number 3.
Context has a lot to play in stress.
Yeah. Well, I think for the 3, the first stress is the all. Make sure all the equipment. And the second word is clean.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly where I would put it as well. Make sure all the equipment is clean and emphasizing that. Good. Number 4.
I think it would be wear and goggles.
So I think, again, it depends on the context here.
Yeah, I have
Uh,
to can be.
I think it could be you have to
Yeah,
wear
yeah.
your goggles. Like maybe they're like, do we really have to? Yes, you have to. But yeah, definitely as well, goggles. What are we trying to say? Which item? Good. And then in the last one,
I think I would stress today and 2.
Mhm.
So in today's lecture, we are going to do 2 things.
excellent. Yes, and this is something you might do at the beginning of your lecture, right? Give an overview of what's going to happen. So in today's lecture, we're going to do 2 things, and that way your students know, okay, I need to focus on 2 main ideas. That's the purpose of that. Absolutely. Great job.
One of to kind of practice that and get ready for that, because I know I think it goes back to the question, do we learn this? Is it like specifically taught? One of the things I always advise students to do in ESLP 12 is to kind of create a little script for yourself. So if you know that you're going to be giving instructions in a class, even if you have some of these things written down, like reminders, remind them they must wear their goggles, right? So you can have those things ready and phrases that you can particularly practice, especially if you know that these are instructions you might be giving each time, and practicing the stress beforehand. So I know it sounds silly, but having that script there is also kind of your class notes and your reminders for that lesson. And it does give you a little bit help practicing with the stress. So, all right. And another way to kind of focus on stress is being able to recognize the content words, right? So there are words in English that we stress regardless of the length of the sentence. And then there are function words, words that seem to just kind of fade into the sentence, right? We don't put a lot of stress on those. And if we did stress every word in the sentence the same way, it would sound awkward and it would sound unnatural. So this is a video that I like because he breaks it down and he shows you exactly how we're doing that. And I think sometimes if you can see it, it makes it a little bit easier. This also will show you why sometimes
when native speakers are talking that it sounds like we are speaking very fast.
All right, welcome to Bill's English. Today we're going to talk about English word stress, and we're going to focus on function words and content words. Now, you may not have heard these terms before, but I'll give you an example. So, function words are words like articles, prepositions, verb endings, auxiliary verbs. Okay, so these words, they don't get stressed in English. So, if you are speaking and you stress them, then it's going to make your pronunciation a little bit unnatural. Content words, on the other hand, are words like nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs. These words will receive stress, and the vowel will be a strong vowel. They will have at least one strong vowel in these words. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So, John has been working all night. Here we have 4 content words. Okay, so John, work, all, and night. These are the content words, and we would stress them. Okay, these are all content words. These words, has and been, and the ing at the end, these are function words, and we don't stress them. So we say, John has been working all night. So this vowel has a strong vowel, this one does, and this one does. But these vowels are a little bit weak. Okay, so I can show you another example. So this is John works all night. Every word is a content word, every word is stressed. So in a lot of languages, you add more words to the sentence and it will make the sentence longer. But in English, you have to add content words to the sentence to make it sound longer. If you add function words, the sentence isn't going to sound longer. So compare this one to the next one. John works all night. John is at work all night. John works all night. John is at work all night. So in this case, you have these strong vowels here, but then these vowels are weak. We don't put stress on them. Let's look at another example. I can add more function words and it's still going to be the same. So we have John works all night. John is at work all night. John is working all night. So it's the same pattern. I can add more too. John has been working all night. John has been working all night. Okay, same thing. We can add more content words and it's not going to make the sentence that much longer. So, John could have been working all night. John could have been working all night. It's the same deal. John has been working all night. John could have been working all night. So it's the same deal. Now I'm talking pretty fast here, but you're going to find this when you go out in the real world. People will talk like this. It's going to be hard for you to find people pronouncing every single word very clearly. The function words are going to be de-stressed. So it's going to be like this. All right. All right, welcome to Bill's English. Today.
So I think this one's you, Teresa.
Okay, so to practice intonation, there are some rules that can help you try and figure some of these things out. So phrasal intonation, right, is typically the pattern of words in thought groups. So for example, if you have a phrasal verb, you're going to stress the word that comes after that verb. So for example, if I said turn off the light, I'm stressing off, right? Because I'm trying to stress the action that I'm asking for, right? If I turn that into a noun, another example that is his behavior is such a turnoff, right? So I'm stressing the word such, right? And so if you are using phrasal intonation, you're going to put the stress after the verb or the action that you're trying to describe. That's one thing to try and keep in mind. And then sentence intonation is the lowering of pitch on the syllables that are following the phrasal stress. So typically if you have sentences, so we're going to try and practice it here, looking at where the stress is. So usually the last thought group in a sentence, you're going to drop some of that stress. So I think I've done this with some of you that are in the workshop before, so you may be able to figure these out a little bit easier, but I know that it can be confusing. So call out if you know it. Just by moving the stress in these sentences, I changed the whole scenario of what's going on, right? So does somebody want to try and read number 1, putting the stress on the word to? You want to try reading it out loud, seeing if you can place the stress there and what's happening? Anybody?
Yeah, I can try this.
Go ahead.
I ask, sorry, I
Go ahead.
ask for 2 large coffees to go.
I asked for 2 large coffees to go. Right, so now, if I place the stress on the word to, what is the problem in that sentence?
Um,
So think about that. This is an interaction that's going on, and this is the follow-up.
Maybe
Mhm.
you mean it's 2, not 1 or 3. You mean the
Exactly.
number 2, yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm in a coffee shop and I said I asked for 2 large coffees to go, I didn't get 2, right? So maybe I only got 1, or maybe I got 3, right? Perfect. All right, anyone want to try the second one, placing the stress on large?
Yeah, I can try.
Go ahead.
I asked for 2 large coffees to go.
Okay, and now if I if I move and shift that stress, what's the problem in that sentence?
Here large is emphasized just because the coffee size is the size of the coffee is large. It's not small or medium, so that's why
Exactly.
emphasized it.
Yep, so I did not get large. Maybe I paid for 2 large coffees and I got 2 small coffees, right? Or medium coffees. Good. What about the third sentence? If I shift the stress to coffees? Somebody want to try it?
I can go for it. I
Go ahead,
asked
Sam.
for 2 large coffees to go.
I asked for 2 large coffees to go. So now what is the problem here?
Maybe they get me wrong and get me teas or something
Right,
rather
I
than
got the wrong order. Yeah, I got the wrong thing, right? Okay, good. What about the last sentence? Somebody want to try moving the shift to go?
I can go. I asked for 2 large coffees to go.
Good. And what's
So maybe, I mean, I will have the coffee to go, not for here. So
yes. Yeah. So maybe I did not get my coffee in a travel mug, right? They gave it to me in a cup or something, right? So I got 2 large coffees to go. Good. So you can see the exact same words, exact same length in the sentence, but just by shifting the stress in my sentence, I changed 4 different scenarios. Okay.
And again,
right.
what's important here is, again, so when you're thinking about what word should you stress, it's not always a right or wrong answer. All of these are fine to stress that particular word. It just depends on what context you want. So again, if you want to convey something specific to your students, you want to say, okay, what is it that I need them to do? What is it that I need them to hear? What is it I need them to gain from this particular sentence? So depending on that depends then which word you're going to put that stress onto.
And taking into account the context of what's going on. And I also think as a listener, it's important, right? So maybe if you are not sure of what somebody means, trying to repeat it back to them, because they typically then it can confirm if you're placing the stress where you think you hear it, right? And you repeat that back, that can also confirm meaning, which is also a challenge, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that happens between native speakers. I think even more so now, if you go out in public at all, because masks are on and sounds are muffled because of it. And maybe that's happening in the classroom. I don't know how many of you are teaching on, virtually, how many of you maybe are doing some in-person component. I think there are challenges both ways. Virtually, it could be a lag in internet connection that causes those stresses and things to be misheard, or it could be in person, again, with masks on, that maybe you are doing it correctly. It's just still harder to hear. I know that a few times I've been out of trying to order something and, they say, did you say 2 coffees, right? Because they just want to clarify, is that what I heard? And so they'll put that stress and then you repeat that back. Yes, 2, right? And then you can also use some other compensatory strategies, right? So not only am I going to stress the word 2 in that first sentence, I asked for 2, right? So I can give my nonverbals as well to help try and put that stress or emphasis. So if you find yourself in this situation where it seems like your students are not understanding and it's either maybe you're putting the stress in the wrong place or you are putting it correctly, they're still just not getting it, try to think of those other strategies you can employ in order to help you get that point across. Any questions about that one?
I think also a really good resource for this, I'll put it in the chat. I've shown this to some of you, I think, in the past, but there's video lessons on this website. It's called learnenglishfeelgood.com. And if you go to the video lessons, you can listen. They're short little clips. So they use things like movie trailers and just 1 to 3 minute clips from different television shows and movies. So I think if you just have a few minutes to listen to them, you'll see the word stress and you'll hear how native speakers of English will how I think it's a more natural kind of English that you'll hear in those movie clips that are on that website, because it's not something that's pre-recorded or from a textbook. So I mean, you know yourself, when you listen to movies or if you're watching TV, it can be a little bit more challenging than some of the academic recordings, right? Because they're not slowing it down, they're not enunciating sometimes as clearly. So you put this handout in the chat, correct, Kayla?
Yes, I did earlier. And again, I will email you all of these resources, the links and things we've been putting in the chat. I'll put it all in one nice email for you, so it's all in one location. What we really just want to encourage is that this is an ongoing practice, and obviously you do care about it. You took time out of your day to attend this workshop, so you're dedicated to continue improvement, and it's going to take time. So we're just trying to provide more resources. Again, also know that ICAPE is here for this continued support for you as an ITA. We don't just simply test and say, okay, you passed or you didn't pass. Once you pass, we can still support you. So if there are challenges you're having due to being a multilingual speaker, maybe even cultural, reach out to us. And if it's not something that we typically help with, we can connect you to the right resource. So we are here for continued support. So again, the InTops email is the best way to reach out if you have a concern, something's going on. It could even be a scenario that happened. We try to address those within our coursework often, of saying like, how would you handle this? But things are constantly changing as well. Again, there are new challenges now if you are doing it virtually compared to being face to face, right? We don't have all of maybe the same tools that we have in the classroom where we've maybe taught you like write it on the board, or it's different, right? You would just maybe have to type it in the chat. And so just kind of recognizing what some of those additional strategies might be online compared to in person. So hopefully you found everything we've covered today beneficial. And again, these resources will be available for you, but I want to make sure we just have a couple minutes left here and want to be cognizant of your time. So just at the end, you see our references. We took some activities and things from some of these textbooks. And again, really give you some time if you have any additional questions or comments that you want to provide, of some suggestions, or maybe a pronunciation issue you've experienced in your class that you want to ask us about. And I'm also going to put in the chat the survey for today. And again, that's a great place for you to let us know what other types of workshops you'd be interested in, especially geared towards being a TA and what those experiences are. We do have one coming up in, I think, about 2 weeks, classroom interactions for ITA. So talking about answering questions and asking questions and some of these other additional strategies beyond just pronunciation. So that survey is in the chat. If you can complete that, that would be great. Just should take you a couple minutes, but we do have a couple minutes left that if you want to ask any questions or tell us about an experience you've had that you want to know about. I do see one in the chat. What the basic difference in speaking between American English or British English and also their accent.
It's a lot of it is the vowel stress.
Yeah.
The difference between British English and American English. A lot of it is the way they pronounce their vowel sounds and where they stress the vowel sounds. That's one of the biggest things. I also think, and I know that Tanimoy, you and I have had this conversation about different words that they would use in Britain than we use here, right? We were talking the other day about his mobile, right, rather than a cell phone. So different words and different vowel stresses, I think, make one of the biggest differences in British pronunciation. Kayla, I just wanted to add to this too, that if you want further practice, if you feel like maybe you need a little bit of individualized practice to work on some of these sounds, I want to remind you that we also do offer tutoring. So ICAPE offers tutoring for students. You can buy individual sessions, you could buy an entire semester of sessions of tutoring, but we're also offering one free session to graduate students. So if there is something that you would like to work on privately with a tutor, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat for you further. And we do have sessions that we'll be setting up soon. So keep that in mind. If you wanted to work on something like that handout that Kayla just passed out for the segmentals, right? But that might be helpful for you too. So I just put that in the chat for you. If you want any information on the tutoring program, you can just shoot me an email and I'll get that to you.
So if you don't have any questions, you're free to go. Just make sure you do that survey and I will be following up with an email with, again, the recording, the materials and the resources that we've provided, and hope to maybe see you at the next one as well. And again, we plan to continue to develop more workshops for later in the semester or in the summer to continue to provide support. So let us know some ideas of what it is that you hope to get some more help with being an ITA.
Thank you, Kayla and Teresa.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I benefit a lot from today's lecture.
Good. It was nice to see you, Han.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye, Senna. Have a
Good
nice
day.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.